Hey, everybody, welcome back to this live episode of Think Business with Mark Gaunya. He is an entrepreneur on a lifelong mission to make healthcare easier and more affordable for people. Mark, let's start there. Healthcare costs are so expensive. I think we're seeing more entrepreneurs spark up in a post-pandemic, endemic world. And so I think, and one of the things that I think holds people back from starting their own companies, especially if they have families, are healthcare costs. They are a fortune. And so let's dive in here. You are the principal of Borislow Insurance and founder CEO of Captivated Health. Again, your mission is to make healthcare easier and more affordable for people. It's what gets you up in the morning, which I love. But talk about how does that really happen?
John, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and talk to your audience about, especially if they're business owners and leaders of businesses, they already know that employee benefits is the second largest expense on their operating statement on the expense side, only outstripped by payroll, and it grows 4 to 5 times faster than any other.
Yeah.
Our market that we focus on is employers between 50 and 1,000 employees. And the reason I bring you back there to answer the question is right now, roughly 50 million people in this country get their health insurance in that market segment. And so the biggest challenge we see in that space is that employers who are sponsoring these health insurance plans are really buying something from a system that wasn't geared to help the consumer. The system was designed to help feed the rule makers. And what I mean by the rule makers is you have 4 entities: the government, hospital systems, private health insurance or publicly traded health insurance companies, and the pharmaceutical industry or PBMs. Those 4 created this system you and I call healthcare, and they administer it through an opaque process called coding and billing. So every time you and I touch the system, a code gets generated, sent to the insurer to tell them what the service was. The contracted amount or discounted amount is then fed back to the provider of the care that you get. And I don't have a problem with that process. What I have a problem with is that you don't know about the price or quality of the service you're getting in healthcare until after you buy it. That's the problem with healthcare, is the lack of transparency in the system.
Okay. So that being said, we have companies like yours that kind of come in and help people give people details of kind of what that step is, right? Like, how do you actually walk in and help people?
So first thing we do is our client is the employer who's sponsoring the health insurance plan on behalf of their employees. And so our first customer, if you will, is to make sure that the CFO, the CEO, the head of HR or Total Rewards actually understands how the healthcare system works. And ultimately, what I mean by that is how they're actually purchasing health insurance today. And when they purchase health insurance on behalf of their employees, they don't really have a lot of control in many cases because they're buying from the system. What we do is bring them into our Captivated Health community, where they actually take the risk of sponsoring the plan for their employees, right? And then ultimately paying the claims that their employees and their family members generate in the form of healthcare expenses. So the first step in the process is to have an employer, a plan sponsor, understand that if you stay in the traditional insured world that the health insurance companies have set up, you won't have any control and you won't have any data.
Yeah.
What we then do is move you from that world into the world where you will have control and you will have data. And then we wrap around their plan, their design, concierge service for their employees and their family members that answers the phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year, has a mobile app that enables them with all kinds of tools and resources, and essentially provides employees and their family members with a guide to navigate the healthcare system to seek the highest quality care at the lowest possible price.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So rewind for me for a minute, because I want to talk a little bit about, before we went on air, one of the things you said to me, it's legitimately your lifelong mission to make healthcare easier and more affordable for people.
Yes.
Why?
My mom and dad were clinical people. My mom was a nurse. My dad was a physical therapist, but they weren't your traditional clinicians. They were entrepreneurial clinicians who really got into healthcare to help people, not to make money. And over the years of growing up with them, I really began to understand that healthcare system was not friendly to people, ordinary people like you and me. So I got into the business of healthcare. I'm not very science oriented, John. So science never came easy to me, but I am mathematically oriented. So I got into the business of understanding healthcare, worked for my parents for the first, 5 or 7 years out of school. Then I went to work for health insurance carriers for about a decade. And then I've been on the consulting and consumer side for the last 17, 18 years. So the reason I care about this is that I know the system doesn't serve the people. And because I have that view of being on the provider side, on the payer side, and now on the employer and consumer side, the view that I have of the healthcare system is what I call 360 degrees. I don't look at it from only one angle. I look at it from a three-dimensional angle.
Yeah. How does the system ever get changed? You're talking about a system, healthcare, and you're talking about a system that doesn't serve the people. Where does it, from your perspective, how does it evolve to actually serve the people?
So the first principle, and I'm well known for saying this, is health insurance is expensive because healthcare is expensive. So the first step in this process is to make all healthcare price and quality transparent. Fortunately, the last administration made this a priority and they actually passed legislation. First, it was an executive order that was challenged and won in court twice. And then the omnibus bill, which was passed at the end of 2020, codified this in the Surprise Medical Billing Act that requires price and quality, the system, to disclose price and quality up front. So that's the first step, because if you can't see it, you can't measure it. And if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. The second step in the process, once we have transparency, is to educate people. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, in our country, roughly the healthcare literacy rate's about 14%. Now, there's no half of a person. So essentially what that means is roughly 9 out of 10 people have no idea how to speak the language of healthcare. I don't know if you traveled to a foreign country and tried to talk a language that wasn't native to you and had a book that you would open up to try and have a conversation. It's nearly impossible to have a conversation. So what we focus on is building healthcare confidence at the member level to debunk a lot of the myths they've been told about the system. But we started that conversation with their employer first, right? The employer who's sponsoring the plan really needs to understand that the way the game has always been played doesn't necessarily help them achieve their objectives, and we educate them. The second step in our process is to educate the actual user or the employee and their family members.
Got it. All right, so let's talk about you and your business for a minute. So
Sure.
You're in the insurance business, and then you move into the healthcare business. What was that evolution? How did that come about?
So I can remember, again, as I shared with you, I grew up in a family of healthcare people, and I got to understand what it meant to try and run a business of helping people, and then using the billing and coding process to get paid for what you do. After my parents sold their company, I went to go work for insurers because I was young, and I said, I want to see where they go write the check rather than wait to receive the check. This is how unscientific it was, John. I got to go where they're writing the check and find out what the rules are. So I did that for about a decade. And then I combined the knowledge of that provider system background along with the insurer background to then help employers and individuals really understand how the system works.
Mm-hmm.
When I say works, the system is set up to fund itself rather than care about you and me as people who are having a healthcare event. And again, I think coming from a family of clinical people who wanted to help make people better is why I care so passionately about healthcare.
Yeah.
And then the business of healthcare is really helping people decode the system the way it is today and set up a better future for their company and for their employees.
Yeah. How do companies make the change?
Not easily.
Yeah.
There's an old saying that people resist change. I disagree. They're like, Mark, what do you mean? That's an old adage. I'm like, no, they resist transition. They don't resist change, because once I change, I help you change from the world you're in to the new world. You love the change. But when I tell you all the work associated with making that change, I call that transition. That's where you get a little resistance from people. So the first is we try and attract the right type of mindset with the people we work with. Are you an entrepreneurial mindset? Are you someone who's frustrated with the status quo? Do you want control over your future? Do you want data analytics so that you actually understand what's going on with your people, not the individual people, but collectively what's going on with your people so that you can design healthcare benefits in a way in which will make a difference to the people that you employ and the family members that they have on the plan with them.
Yeah. Let's talk about insurance for a minute. What are some insurances that every company needs to have that they don't think about?
So I think what people really should be investing in today is having a health savings account. And when I say having a health savings account, you need to pair it with a qualified high deductible health plan. That helps create the connection between health and wealth. Most people are familiar with a retirement plan, a 401k, a 403b plan, but they don't necessarily make a connection between the retirement vehicle and healthcare. Now, you might look at me and say, well, why is that important, Mark? Well, if you look at the Fidelity as an institution, they just came out with a report that showed the average American will be exposed to about $270,000 of medical costs in their retirement. If you don't have a health savings account, there's no way for you to fund that or prepare for that eventuality coming about. So making the connection between the health and wealth in terms of the 401k or 403b and a health savings account would be absolutely one of the things I would put in place.
How do people save today? You know, there's so many people that are strapped, and I think saving today is hard for many Americans. And so what's your advice when you talk about any type of savings, and for healthcare savings is critical? You know, how does somebody go about that? What's the simplest way to go about it?
So the reason I draw up the health savings account is it's the first thing it does for an individual is it helps them understand the actual cost of the healthcare they're receiving. The second thing you do then is give them tools to make educated decisions about that. So as an example, we use a transparency platform called Amino. Amino's platform gives our members access to price and quality information so that they don't just make a decision uneducated about where to go get care. They can actually look at the quality score and the price associated with that care and then make informed decisions. Let me give you a real example. So let's say you hurt your knee and you needed to get an MRI on your knee, right? Your doctor said you needed an MRI. Most people, their doctors will refer them into a hospital-based system. That hospital-based contract may have that MRI be 8 times more expensive than it actually should be in a freestanding outpatient facility. So instead of $4,000, it could be $500, but they wouldn't know that unless A, they were familiar that there is a price difference, and B, that they actually have the ability to contact a service that help them shop for care. So in other words, finding the lowest cost option, but at the highest quality price point.
Yeah.
So the short answer to your question is taking an opportunity to get educated and then having a plan design that the employer rewards the employee, dropping money in their health savings account when they make the right choice.
Yeah. All right, good. I love that. And then talk to me a little bit about you as an entrepreneur. What are, this past year has been, such a changing year, and many say we're leaving kind of, in this endemic now. What have you learned about your business, and how have you evolved your business over the last year?
So the first thing I would say is because my business partner, Jennifer Borslow, and I invest in technology, we were prepared for this. We live in New England. And so we were preparing for the, nor'easter storms we get up here and huge amounts of snow. So we've always had to be prepared to work virtually, work remotely. We didn't allow that for every position, though. And there are some that we debated, should we allow it? Well, the pandemic forced us for that. So I'm proud to say that on March 17th, when we shut down the office and sent everyone home, we were able to, with a flip of a switch, all go remote.
Wow.
That was mechanical. We moved a lot of things to the cloud. We had state-of-the-art equipment. We were prepared mechanically. What was the hardest part for us was we're a very friendly organization. What I mean by that is we really enjoy the social aspect of business, the relationship building of business. And so removing that element and going virtual was absolutely an adjustment.
Yeah.
Every single one of us, right? How do we, and my partner and I, she spends a lot of time on culture. I spend a lot of my time on innovating, looking around the corner. But the two of us looked together and said, what can we do to make sure that our people know we're looking after them, that we care about them, that we care about their families, so we created little social hours. We created what we call coffee chats. We create where we'd have our employees just could drop in. We have 70 employees. So just drop in and have a conversation with the two owners of the company. We did social happy hours for people. We had, board games, not board games, literal board games, but, fun games that we could play with people. And we did a lot of this with our clients as well, where we'd set up social interactions with them on Zoom or Teams, not just with our employees. So first step was looking after our people, making sure that they know that we were taking care of them and we were going to be flexible. We actually lopped off a day a week. We didn't have them work on Fridays because it was so stressful for people. We just said, you know what, we're going to have you work 4 days a week, and we're going to give a shorter day on Friday or a complete day off on Friday so that you actually can decompress and deal with the challenges that are now existing in your life. I
love it. So, such simple things, yet so complicated for many people to implement, and such easy things, right? They don't cost a lot of money. They don't cost a lot of money. They just take some empathy. It gives you a deeper connection emotionally to your people. It forces them and gives them permission to take care of themselves, which I think people need. They need that permission, and that from their. I love everything you just talked about. So kudos to you for doing it the right way. When the pandemic hit last March 2020, I think March, April, May, I was doing these virtual keynotes, all of which were just teaching people how to take care of themselves, how to time block and restructure themselves, because everybody needed to kind of infuse more structure into their day. And part of that structure, companies that I was doing these talks for were wanting me to say to them, and then they were echoing it, you need to carve out time in your day to take care of yourself, or you're gonna lose it. Because you're homeschooling and this. I mean, it was nuts, right?
That was the crazy part about it. Is roughly a third of our workforce had kids, and I'd literally be on Zoom calls, and kids would be crawling on their parents and on their shoulders because bored, right? So I love the word that you use because those are the words we use. We led with empathy.
You have to, yeah.
There were many of our employees have small kids and families. We actually would buy dinners for them.
Yeah, I love it.
And have them delivered. I mean, not expensive, John.
No.
Talk about the goodwill associated with telling somebody, look, I know you're living in crazy land right now.
Yeah.
At least take the preparation of a meal off your shoulders.
Correct. Yeah. So cool. Right. Because usually people do that when it's just somebody dies or there's like a overly stressful time. So kudos to you guys. That's great, Mark. I love that. All right. You ready for a quick speed round?
Sure. Go for it.
All right. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody needs to do to take better care of their health is
eat better.
Mm-hmm. We don't talk about, a lot of times people don't talk about that. We talk about healthcare. We talk about this, but we're not talking about how to actually eat better and understand how you need to eat. That's for another show. But I love that you said that because it's, I just found out I have gout, which is like such a pain, and it's so restrictive of what you can and can't eat, and it doesn't go away. And so when you're forced to do it, it's not as fun.
No, when you're being reactive as opposed to proactive, it's not as fun. But I'll be honest with you, I've changed my diet through this. I mean, during the beginning of the pandemic, I was living a lot of unhealthy choices with regard to food and beverage. We'll just call it that. And then as I moved through that, I'm like, you know what? You need to, and like any automobile, which our bodies are,
correct.
Put bad fuel in, you're going to have a bad performance.
Yeah. I don't know. The first couple months of the pandemic, my wife, kids, and I were making cookies and cakes every night for like 3 months. There was nothing. You couldn't go grocery shopping, and so we were baking. I mean, I think I was eating, 6 cookies a night. So anyway, but
sugar. That's what happens. Sugar's the evil doer, John.
Right. It is Monopoly. Right. Monopoly and cookies.
Right. Not good.
Right. Favorite book and why?
Oh, favorite book and why? I read a lot of business books. I can't give you a speed answer on this because I like so many. But I'm a John Grisham novelist reader. I love to read his books. So I won't pick one. because there are too many good ones.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a business reader too. I read 98% of the books I read are business, but I do like John Grisham. It's like you can, because they're easy to read, right?
You can relate. Well, he writes a lot about business, right?
Yeah.
That was his first book was The Firm. I'm like, oh, I'm all about that.
Yeah. Define yourself in one word.
Passionate.
One thing every company needs to do to connect more effectively with their people.
Empathy.
Fast forward 100 years, what do you want your legacy to be?
That I helped make healthcare easier and more affordable for everybody in this country.
One thing people would be surprised to know about you.
I played rugby for 12 years.
Oh, that's very cool. That's cool. And my last question, how much more confident do you feel with a pocket square?
Oh, I feel a lot. This is my signature. This is totally.
It is. I stopped wearing suits last April, but I wore a suit every day for 5-6 years, and for 20 years prior to that. And I always felt like when I wore a pocket square, it just changed the game. Yeah,
it puts a different frame on for me. So I'm known as the cufflink guy.
Yeah,
pocket square guy. And by the way, I have jeans on. I don't have anything fancy on. I'm not wearing a suit. I'm just wearing my button-down shirt and yeah.
Well, I have a black T-shirt on that I've been wearing not the same one, but a black T-shirt every single day for the last 14 months. And I'm wearing Adidas black pants. Hey, Mark, tell everybody who your ideal clients are and how they can get a hold of you.
So our ideal clients are any organization that invests $1 million a year or more in their employee benefits program, that considers themselves to have an entrepreneurial mindset, who are frustrated with the status quo and who want to create a culture of consumerism, health, and well-being in their employee population to help them live healthy lifestyles that they can connect the health and wealth of their future to.
Yeah, I love it. A couple of final thoughts, you said a lot of great things, but I just want to tap into the idea of just empathy, right? I mean, being in front of and giving your people permission to unwind, take a step back, and give them a breath. I think that is so critical. Any final thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. And what I would say is that I believe our firm's different because we have a collection of benefit superheroes who care deeply about the people that we work with. We're not selling insurance, John. That's how what we're selling is a better future to the organizations and the people that work for them.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Mark, your mission, your lifelong mission, one of the things that you shared, and I'm going to put it here on the screen, your lifelong mission is to make healthcare easier and more affordable for people. One of mine is to provide coaching to over 1 billion people and get them thinking big by getting them unstuck, staying consistent, and being fulfilled. Think community. To infuse that, my book and my ebook are all downloadable for free at johndwoskin.com. You can check those out there. Mark, I really appreciate you being on the show. Give everybody your website one more time before we're done.
Sure. www.captivatedhealth.com and www.borislowinsurance.com.
I love it. All right. If Mark can help you, think community, reach out. Mark, it was a pleasure. Thanks, man. That was fun.
Thanks, John.